Previously on
WAATJ YouTube. Information on Samaritan Israelite.
and when
The world.
turned his attention to
Israel Palestine. He remembered he wanted to make a video.
using the awesome
Power of exhaustive research.
nice work,
YouTube.
but will
This internet video.
be enough.
To satisfy your search for knowledge.
Stay tuned.
So, in researching my last video about the Jewish origins of Palestinians, I saw a lot of stuff about Samaritans. They were a big deal once, historically.
Countless wars, conversions to Christianity and Islam, famine and disease have decimated their number, which 3,000 years ago was estimated to be about 1 million.
And I remembered that I wanted to do a video about them. Are Samaritans Jews? Interesting question, me. Interesting enough for a whole video, in fact. Interesting enough that I wrote a huge amount of notes and ripped video clips in preparation for answering it here. But that journey leads us so far away from our original goal, and it'll have to wait. I also saw them referred to as Palestinian Jews a lot.
קוראים לכם היהודים הפלסטינאים.
And I wanted to explain that that is not quite correct.
Their house of worship is a synagogue that resembles a mosque. Their religious robes resemble dervish dress, and they prostrate as Muslims do.
השומרונים הם יהודים?
הם ישראלים.
הם ישראלים?
כן.
כן? אוקיי. אבל אתה חושב, השומרונים חושבים שאתם יהודים או שומרונים?
שוב, אני אומר, אנחנו שומרונים.
Perfectly integrated into the Arab world of the West Bank, Samaritans share a language and culture with Palestinians.
אתם גם חושבים שאתם ערבים, פלסטינים?
אנחנו שומרונים.
כן.
ישראלים, בני ישראל.
ערבים תמיד אומרים לנו שאנחנו יהודים. כי הם לא יודעים, בוא נגיד, מה זה שומרונים. אנחנו אומרים להם תמיד, אנחנו לא יהודים, אנחנו ישראלים. בני ישראל העתיקים.
כי הפלסטינים אומרים שאתם יהודים פלסטינים.
בסדר, היהודים אומרים לנו אתם ערבים, והערבים אומרים לנו אתם יהודים.
But it is not quite incorrect either.
וישראלים זה אחד.
The community has managed to preserve its religion and an outlook on life that is in keeping with the parable of the Good Samaritan.
So Abdallah is a very Arabic name, considered to be very Arabic in a way, and Cohen is a very Israeli, and that kind of causes, people to get confused when they see this combination.
It is confusing, in reference to Jewish Palestinian Jews and in the context of my last video.
It's probably a little bit confusing for them because they come to this place and they start seeing Israeli cars with Palestinian cars, so they might start thinking like, oh, okay, am I in an Israeli place or am I in a Palestinian place? And then they start seeing this ancient culture and they try to connect it to, wait, are they Jewish or are they not?
Neither Jewish nor Muslim, Samaritans coexist with these two communities that are forever at odds.
We, as a Samaritan, we consider ourselves that a bridge between the Palestinian and the Jew for peace. Come here and speak, because the peace, we can do peace.
نعمل زيارات للمسؤولين الإسرائيليين والعرب ونحكي كل إشي منيح لأجل السلام نهديهم ولازم نعمل سلام لأن هذه الأراضي هي مقدسة لازم يكون فيها سلام.
We are like a hub between Israel and the Palestinian people. We try to help them at the maximum.
We want to be the bridge of peace between Palestinians and Israelis.
Muslim, Samaritan, Jew, Christian, anyone who can come here. We have one law, just respect.
I wanted to do a shorter video just to fully explain this incredible Judaism-adjacent group. So if you Google it, you'll get some I'll call it helpful people groups. You've probably heard the Good Samaritan, Jesus told a story about a Samaritan who helped a guy on the road or something. Yeah. Well, despite this story, Christians treated Samaritans pretty bad. But in all honesty, Jews also treated Samaritans pretty bad. And Muslims treated Samaritans pretty bad.
إسرائيل ما قرأتي بشم أدوناي إلهي إسرائيل. Why? Because Assyrian, Babylon, Persian, Yavani, Romain, Byzantine, Muslim, every country came here, killed the Samaritan.
They've had it rough. But we'll get to that. First off, who are they?
They are the Shomronim, or the keepers.
They refer to themselves not as Samaritans, but as Bnei Israel.
ישראלים בני ישראל, לפני 3,600 שנה,
אוקיי.
אז קראו לנו שומרונים.
If that tells you anything. Anyway, I'm going to start with practices and beliefs, then get to the history this time. Okay, it's basically Judaism.
השומרונים, מה ההבדל בין שומרונים ויהודים?
תשמע, אין הבדל גדול בין השומרונים ליהודים.
Can you tell me about Shabbat?
First of all, you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to study. You're not allowed to use any car because fire is forbidden and we don't use any kind of electricity. Shabbat is personally my favorite day of the week.
We have a room for period. We just enter it when we have a period. We relax, we rest in these 7 days, we go away. So we do a lot of things in these 7 days.
So it'd be easier to talk about differences.
זה הבדל קטן לפי חגים, לפי המנהג של השומרונים, המנהגים מתחלפים, התפילות גם, לא הרבה, אבל קטן מאוד.
אוקיי.
בוא נגיד ככה, חגים, אנחנו עושים את החגים שלנו רק מה שכתוב בתורה. חוץ מזה לא עושים. חוגגים חג סוכות, פסח.
מתי סוכות שלכם?
עוד חודש.
אוקיי.
עוד קצת.
אוקיי. אז הלוח זמנים זה לא אותו.
They have the Samaritan Pentateuch, which, is just their Torah, 5 books, all that, in its own Proto-Paleo-Hebraic script, which is called Samaritan. It's the same deal, though. It's the Torah. If you look it up, everyone will say there are 6,000 differences, which sounds wild, but the vast, vast majority of those are just grammatical, spelling variations. The Samaritan Pentateuch repeats a bunch of stuff when Moses is talking to Pharaoh, which I guess are implied in the Torah, but are not explicitly said. So, pretty minor. The major difference is their emphasis on Mount Gerizim.
ומה ההבדל בין יהודי ושומרוני?
ההבדל פשוט, אתה נמצא בו בהר גריזים, ויהודים מאמינים בירושלים. זה ההבדל המשמעותי.
במקום ירושלים שהיא עיר קדוש, פה זה עיר קדוש, נכון?
כן.
מעניין, אוקיי.
לנו מה שהכי חשוב זה להגיע להר גריזים, שהדרך תישאר פתוחה, שנצליח להגיע בשלום ובבטחה כמו שאומרים. זה מה שקובע עבורנו בעצם, זה הדבר הכי חשוב עבורנו.
This is of course Mount Gerizim, our holy mountain, and it is written in the Torah that this is the chosen place. You have to offer the blessing on Mount Gerizim and to visit the mountain 3 times a year.
They believe Mount Gerizim is the holiest location where the binding of Isaac happened, and that the Jews split off from them when they followed the prophet Eli to Jerusalem and changed the focus to Mount Zion. The major-ist difference is that they have an extra 10 commandment, counting the first one as the 0th, commanding Moses to make a sacrifice on Mount Gerizim. So that's wild. Little fun fact. The Dead Sea Scrolls seem to agree with the Samaritan Pentateuch. But anyway, besides that, pretty similar, huh?
Marrying outside of the community can lessen the risk of genetic diseases. This is possible for Samaritans because their religion is passed down through the father and because the Ukrainian women converted.
Okay. I'm gonna proverbially blow my proverbial load here. The reason for the similarities are that they were originally the same religion. So, history. I've covered the kingdom split and the Neo-Assyrian conquest before, so I'm gonna breeze through it. The original kingdom of Israel lasted between 1030 and 930 BC, at which point it split into the kingdoms of Israel in the north and Judah in the south. In 732 BC, the Neo-Assyrian Empire annexed part of the northern kingdom and deported the population around their empire, but came back 10 years later, resulting in the destruction of Israel, also called Samaria, in 722 BC, upon which they ethnically cleansed the rest of the population, moving those they didn't kill. Meanwhile, the kingdom of Judah got caught up between an ascendant Egypt and the Assyrians. They held out until the Neo-Assyrians became the Neo-Babylonians. The Neo-Babylonians eventually destroyed their temple and took the kingdom's population to be slaves in Babylon, where they weren't allowed to return until the Persians conquered Babylon in 539 BC. Shoutouts to Cyrus the Great. At which point everyone had come back to the land, pointed at each other, and asked, "Who are you?" The Samaritans claimed that they are the descendants of the tribes of the north, and the Jews claimed that they were Neo-Assyrian people who moved into the region and adopted the religion. I am more inclined to agree with the Samaritans because there is historical evidence for their deportation and gradual return, and historical precedents for Jews being super dickish about accepting other Jews. When Jews came back, shout out Cyrus, and reformed Jewish society, they came up with this story that Samaritans were the outsiders who were resettled in Israel from all over Assyria and then adopted the religion of the region. It's dumb. People believed it. People died for it. But not yet, interestingly. Despite the division and cultural drift that was beginning in the two communities, they were still highly integrated at this point. Biblical and archaeological sources indicate that there were even intermarriages between the two communities. And not in the, begrudging it happened sort of way, in the it's aight, we're all children of Israel sort of way. Cool. So the Hellenistic period, Alexander comes around in the 330s BCE, and despite brutal crackdowns against a Samaritan uprising, the temple on Mount Gerizim and surrounding settlement boomed at this time. Just like the Jews, Samaritans are split into Hellenized Samaritans and regular Samaritans. Just like the Jews, they diasporized through the empire, with the oldest surviving Samaritan synagogue being in Greece, the Delos synagogue from the 2nd century BCE. The Mount Gerizim synagogue dates back to the 5th century BCE, but as we'll see, it did not survive. In the early 100s BCE, the Seleucids don't make distinctions between Jews and Samaritans. They profane the Jewish temple in Jerusalem and the Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim, dedicating them both to Zeus. It doesn't last, but it shows that they're sort of the same deal at this time. Okay, but here's where it gets bad. Second Temple Judaism, which was happening at this point, is wild different from First Temple Judaism. The Hasmoneans, aka the Maccabees, gain independence and go to conquer Samaria, which is an autonomous Seleucid state. They destroy the Mount Gerizim temple. Fucked. Though the Samaritans are allowed to rebuild the temple, now the two communities are officially ops. There's a lot of biblical stuff about Samaritans converting to Christianity, Christian Bible stuff, and this wouldn't be wild because Jews were pretty awful to them. But the Christians were not better, and the Byzantine Christians were worse. Emperor Zeno, 474 to 491 CE, took Mount Gerizim, rounded up the elders, told them to convert. When they didn't, he killed them, destroyed the temple, and built a church and a tomb for his son, so they'd have to pray at the tomb. Samaritans were not going. They revolted, burned some churches, killed some Christians. And for that, as you can probably guess, they were rounded up, killed, and enslaved. They tried again in 529 under a messianic figure named Julianus ben Sabar with the goal of independence, and Justinian I crushed them, killed tens of thousands, enslaved tens of thousands more, and outlawed the religion. Unfun fact. They build their sukkahs indoors to this day, which according to Samaritan historian Benjamin Sadaka, began during this period of Byzantine persecution, when the Samaritans had to go ultra-crypto. They revolted twice more in the 500s, but with the same awful results. The community dwindled from hundreds of thousands in the early centuries of the Common Era to tens of thousands at this time. Even Muslim rule didn't save them. Just like the Jews, they were considered people of the book, and just like the Jews, there were a few periods of forced conversions and massacres, but mostly just a slow assimilative pressure. Unlike the Jews, there weren't enough of them left. A 12th century estimate by Benjamin of Tudela estimated that there were only about 1,900 of them remaining in Palestine and Syria. Those who lived in diaspora generally assimilated into other Jewish communities or converted to Christianity or Islam. The Crusades weren't good. The Mamluks and Ayyubids weren't good either. So sadly, even the Ottomans weren't good. The Samaritan communities of Egypt and Damascus were massacred and forced to convert in the 17th century. The majority of Samaritans lived in Nablus, where they recovered a little bit at this time until an earthquake hit in 1759. By the end of the 18th century, there were only 200 of them. In 1840, the Ulama of Nablus declared Samaritans weren't even people of the book, and therefore had to convert to Islam or die. In the one heartwarming, or not even heartwarming, just like a ICU story of this whole thing, the chief Turkish rabbi Haim Abraham Gagin decreed that they were indeed people of the book and should be protected. The ulama stopped preaching against them for a 1,000 British pound payment. Still, by the end of the 19th century, there were barely 100 Samaritans left.
1,000 years ago, of course, this used to be one of the synagogues, but now we don't. We only know this one, which is in a kind of a sad condition, but this is what remained of it.
Those that remained now lived in mandatory Palestine. You would think that would be difficult, but actually, they stayed out of it.
בקשר לסכסוך בין פלסטינאים וישראלים, איפה אתם, כאילו, בזה?
אנחנו לא פה ולא שם. לא מתערבים בפוליטיקה.
את שומעת או מקבלת בעיות מהיהודים או מהערבים? כאילו זה שאתם שומרונים?
לא. פה השומרונים מתקבלים מאוד יפה אצל הערבים. אני אגיד לך את זה.
ואתם מרוצים פה? כאילו הכל טוב?
כן. אין מקום בעולם שהוא הכל טוב. אבל תודה לאל, הכל בסדר.
When I get asked, so wait, are you pro-Israeli or are you pro-Palestinian? I don't think I'm pro-anything at this point. I really do want to live in peace, you know? You can't be pro-anything.
For the most part. At the beginning, they were caught in the crossfire when they were confused for Jews in the 1929 riots, but Palestinians and Jews settled into, their awful status quo, and both kind of left the Samaritans alone.
אבל להיות שומרוני זה לחיות בין היהודים ובין הערבים, קודם כל.
Okay.
זה להיות באמצע.
I still love the land. I really love the Holy Land, despite the unholy things that happen in it. But I think there's a lot of work to do.
Half the community lives in the West Bank and half lives in Israel. Because of their weird status in all of this, the West Bank Samaritans are the only people who are eligible for both Israeli and Palestinian citizenship, although the Oslo Accords officially made them Palestinian citizens.
The good connections came because we lived with the Palestinians for many years, especially in Nablus. That means that they know who we are. They know how it is to live with Samaritans. They liked us. We proved to be good neighbors.
אתה תבוא ותראה בחג הפסח יושבים כולם ביחד, שומרונים, ישראלים, יהודים, פלסטינאים, דרוזים, נוצרים, כולם ביחד בחג הזה.
Is it foo? No. Here's DNA. The whole thing basically boils down to Jews say that they're Assyrian settlers and Samaritans say that they're Israelite dissenters. Well, they're all B'nai Israel to me, and to history and the truth. And who cares about the minor belief differences? I'd say they're way less heretical than Messianic Jews. How are they today? Not great. Not terrible, but not great. You know, half in Israel, half in Palestine. Not an enviable existence, but they're still chugging along. The population has, thankfully, rebounded from 100 people at the end of the 19th century to 874 by a 2022 count.
So in the community there is a lot more men than women?
Yes, for each girl, 3 men.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's a really, really huge topic, marriage. We bring it out each weekend, on Shabbat. You discuss those few stories that have been going out between him and her,
How many of your friends of your sort of age have found someone already?
My age, no one.
Finding a partner and settling down is far from straightforward.
Personally, I found one.
You found one?
Yes, she's a Samaritan, and we are really in a great relationship, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're
That's really exciting.
3 years already.
On this occasion, the couple is finally allowed to kiss in public.
However, related to my last video, much of the population of Nablus, perhaps as much as 2/3, are descendants of these ancient Samaritans, and less ancient Samaritans, as, according to historian Fayyad al-Tif, the Ottoman period was one of the worst for them, and it led many of them to convert. Anyway, I salute you, Samaritans. You are my people. Sorry my people kicked y'all out.
We feel optimistic when it comes to the future of the community and our survival and being in this place. I think there's something that's keeping us together, whether it's the traditions or whether it's our past, or whether it's the Torah, whatever it is. I think it's really strong. It is holding us very well, and there's a huge, long sense of belonging to this really old tradition that we have. I mean, also I feel sad for what happened for my community. It's a pretty sad story. You kind of also, it just gives you a little bit more, motivation to not give up and just help this tradition stay alive. I think we did a pretty good job.